So, first of all, hello. Thank you for this invitation. I'm Rita Botelho. I'm Portuguese. I live in Porto. I'm 40 years old. And I was diagnosed actually almost like exactly 1 year ago. It was at the end of February. But actually, I started having motor symptoms 1 year before that date. Everything started because I was dragging my right foot. I was actually on a trip and I suddenly started to hear a different kind of sound when it was actually the sound of the steps. And I was like, there's something strange here. And back then, I was actually having regular tennis lessons and I assume maybe it's an injury. The strange thing is that it was strange to be an injury because there was no pain. It was just the movement that was slower. So I started going. The first thing I did was to go to my family doctor, who prescribed me like anti-inflammatory. Like for 2 weeks, nothing happened. Then I went back. Then I started. So in Portugal, there's free health systems for everyone, for all residents. So that's the first step you do. You don't go to the private system if everything goes well in the public first. The thing is, like, it was not going well because I was not getting answers about my problem. So I started to go to the private system. First, I went to the orthopedic doctor because, again, I assume, and everyone around me, that must be an injury, must be injury. I went to the orthopedic doctor, made lots of how do you call it, CT scans to my back because there might have been an issue with the back, but nothing. There was a point. I mean, I was doing lots of exams. I was like most of the people with young onset Parkinson's disease. I've been really like going to doctor from doctor to doctor, doing lots of exams without any answers. But there was a point. I have a neurologist in the family. He's not a movement disorders a specialist, and he's not direct family. But I gave him some hints of what I felt, and he said, "You really have to go to the neurologist." So I went again in the private system. And she actually made a video. She asked me, "Can I make a video of you walking?" Back then, I had no idea why she was asking me that. And she said, "I would like to show this to my colleagues from the movement disorders specialization." And but that was it. And then she also prescribed me a CT test to my brain. And back then I was totally ignorant. I went to the neurologist, even though my mother has Parkinson's for many years. It didn't even cross my mind that I had Parkinson's because my mother always had tremors from the beginning. She never dragged her foot. She never, so the symptoms were so different. It really didn't cross my mind. And then, of course, I did the CT exam, and everything was fine. And I never went back to the appointment of neurologist. I went, instead of to the neurologist, I went to the, how do you call it, physiatrist, because I wanted to do physiotherapy. Since I was dragging my foot for almost 1 year, I started to have low back pain. So I went to physiotherapy. I was 2 weeks in a physiotherapist, and the physiotherapist was like, I think this is neurologic, because what happened, I was feeling relief one day, and the other day I was exactly the same. And he said, I have a feeling, and he was keep saying this. And after 2 weeks, I had a doctor appointment with the doctor, and he said, "Rita, I talked with your neurologist," because it was all in the same hospital, "and you have to go back there because you have symptoms of Parkinsonism." And when he said that, that was the first time I heard that. And that was my shock. That was a moment of shock because it really, I mean, back then I was already going in that direction, but I didn't want to believe. And from then on, I didn't hear anything he said to me because I knew I had Parkinson. My mother had Parkinson. I started to read some stories of people who had slow movement, because I had no idea that was an issue with Parkinson, or also dragging their feet. And then I knew, and that was the biggest shock. And from then on, of course, I made an appointment with the specialist, movement disorder specialist, and I went back to this neurologist who said you should have come back sooner because I knew what you had, but I just didn't want to tell you right away. I was not sure, but yeah, I didn't know, so I went there. And from then on, she actually, in Portugal, it's like this: when you have Parkinson, you are directed to the public hospital where the best teams are, and always takes around 3-4 months until you get your first appointment. But from then on, you have a whole team taking care of you for free, which is amazing. It's a huge privilege. But because I was waiting and I just heard Parkinsonism and not you have Parkinson, I went to a movement disorder specialist again in the private. So it was like easy to get the appointment. And he started to prescribe me levodopa. And it was amazing because at that point, after all the waiting, after the exams and so on, I was actually already very limited. I didn't have balance. I had a hard time to, like, simple things like taking a shower. I could barely drive if it was not automatic gears, because I couldn't lift my right foot fast enough from acceleration to brake. I do jewelry, and I started to be super my right hand started to show, because it started with the foot, and then without medication, and all the stress of not knowing what I had, in fact, it started to evolve to my right hand. And until the moment I started taking levodopa, I just felt worse and worse. But even when I started taking levodopa, it was like really step by step. At first, very low dose. It took a lot of time. It takes a lot of time for the body and the brain to adapt. So yeah, so that's when I started slowly, very slowly, feeling better and feeling with hope, because I kind of lost my hope. I felt like I have to quit my job. I'm dependent, but things turn out very good. I respond very well to levodopa, and so far so good. So actually, before I started to feel very limited physically, for instance, I have a 7-year-old daughter, just one daughter. I was taking her to school in the morning every day. And that became obvious that I couldn't do it anymore, because in the morning there's always a bit of stress, like hurry up, you have to dress up, have breakfast, prepare the little lunch, the lunch, and make things happen so she arrives exactly at that time at school. And these moments became so stressful, and I felt so stiff, literally, like in the morning, and I was just not managing. So I asked my husband, please take Emma, my daughter's name, to school in the morning, and in the afternoon I'm much better and I can pick her, so I'm more relaxed. So for sure this happened. But I have to say, for some weeks I couldn't drive, so I couldn't even her school, it's not possible to go by foot, so he had to pick her and drop her by himself. I couldn't do it because I just couldn't drive, and that was obviously very frustrating. Then I also, it's funny because one of the things that I learned, and I learned these because I got to know right away after my first diagnosis, a group that it's called Young Parkinson Portugal. It's a group that was created fortunately, some years before I was diagnosed. And they're all people like me, like people who are young, who were diagnosed before 40 or 50 even. And we have like a chat group. So it works kind of a supportive group, and they do lots of initiatives. I actually went to what they call a boot camp right after I was diagnosed, and I met in person these people. So I didn't feel alone. I didn't feel isolated, and I learned from all these people, especially from the best examples in the group, that it's very important to accept and talk about it and just deal with it. And that's what I did. And so soon after my diagnosis, I talk also with my clients. I made even like a video on my Instagram account of my brand, Atelier Pino. And I mentioned that I was diagnosed with Parkinson, so I had to change a little bit the way that I work. So, for instance, back then I was just making pieces uh, on demand. So imagine someone, or I didn't have a stock, someone ordered an earring, I would just make it. And what happened is that back then I started to feel too much stress, and stress is a trigger for Parkinson's symptoms, and I couldn't do it. So I stopped doing that, and I told everyone I just sell what I have in stock, and that was my solution. But what happened is that after some months, when I was adapted to the levodopa, I went back to the old way. So now I'm also doing made to order things. So I had to temporarily change my work system. I'm very fortunate because I'm the boss of myself. I work alone, I do everything. So, in a way, I can make my own rules. I know a lot of people are not this fortunate, but I actually, by telling everyone, I have like more than 20,000 followers on Instagram. I felt so there was a kind of a compassion, but like warm feedback from my clients. I thought, oh, I'm going to say this, and maybe no one is going to order from me because maybe they will question the quality of the pieces. You know what I mean? Because I'm not fit enough. But no, not at all. I still sold the pieces. The clients were still loyal. The regular clients, especially. I felt very warm feedback, and that was actually very good and rewarding, because of course I was also afraid to I had the weight on my chest, and this weight went away and I felt lighter. So I think that's one of the reasons why it's recommended for people to talk about it when they have diagnosed. And I know from friends who have Parkinson's, they spend years until they say it out loud, and they told to to their relatives, to their friends, and it's a heavy weight to carry for years. So I learned with them very soon after diagnosis that was very important for me to go on with my life and be mentally healthy. It's not just about the physical health; it's the mental health. And yeah, I think that this was a very important step after the diagnosis. Actually, well, I can start with that. I think women are more willing to share their feelings in compared to men in general, at least from my personal experience. So I think that helped me in a way to go forward. I have to say I'm very fortunate because I live with a husband who shares equally all the household tasks with me. Also, when it comes to taking care of and educating my daughter, we equally share everything. So I don't feel that weight when it comes to that. But I'm the mother. So imagine my sister is sick. She's coming to me. She's not, mothers are mothers. There's always this feeling of comfort. And when the kids are that young, and they have a problem, it's the mother who gives them comfort. And of course, when I felt the worst, when I was not properly medicated, I didn't have enough energy. I had to sleep longer. She was used to have me in the morning taking care of her. She didn't have that anymore, so I guess it was also hard for her. But at the same time, I started talking with her about having Parkinson's since the beginning. So it became like regular talk. It was not like something weird or heavy topic. It just became daily life topic. So in that way, of course, things change a little bit. But I have to say, physically, there's also a big difference between men, because one of my biggest frustrations when I started taking levodopa, it was when I realized that for 2 weeks of each month, levodopa was not having any effect on me, like zero. I was taking the pill and there was no on. And then this happened during vacations, and I sent a mail to my neurologist, and she said, actually, I knew that during the period and before the period, there's a tendency for the symptoms getting worse. But she never heard back then about the levodopa not having absolutely any effect. during this time around the period. So I started to do my research. I'm this kind of person who's like, I don't take a no for an answer. And I felt so frustrated. I started to, Dr. Google is amazing, the search, and I found a kind of clinical test made with two siblings in 2014 in the US, where they experienced exactly the same as me. So fertile women, more or less the same age as me, who had this issue of not taking levodopa and not having any effect from the levodopa during the period and before the period. And in this test they proved that fluctuation, the hormonal fluctuations, and specifically the estrogen, had a huge effect in the efficiency of I forward this article to my doctor, and she forwards me this email to my gynecologist, also in the hospital, and they say, give it a try. Start taking the birth control pill. I was not taking it, and give it a try. And the truth is that it solves the problem, just like that. And so far so good. And I have an Instagram account where I share some things about my journey with Parkinson's. I already got 2 replies of women who read that I was taking birth control pill with estrogen, and they wonder why. And they said, oh, in fact, I also feel the same. I have to talk with my neurologist about this. So there's not enough data about these issues. Fortunately, it's becoming a topic, and my doctor got together. I mean, for her, it was such a big surprise, and she's a woman, and she's very interested about this topic. So she actually she wrote a scientific paper about my case to be published in the scientific magazine, Neurology. And I was part of this. She asked me about my reports because I wrote everything down. And I'm very happy this article is going to be released, because hopefully will help other people if neurologists are aware of this difference. Yeah. So first of all, I was obviously, let's say I was lazy before I was diagnosed. I was not taking sports and exercise seriously. And we all know that doing exercise regularly, it might be one of the few things that are proven to delay the progression of the disease. So I started doing exercise seriously. And of course, it's not just because of that reason. It made me feel better immediately. There's this boost of dopamine. It might not happen right away, but we feel better. So actually moving regularly, it's very good. Recently, because during the winter, I had a sciatic crisis. I couldn't do this kind of running or more intense exercise. I was just walking in the nature. And I realized that gives me a lot of pleasure. Just getting out of the door, walking in the nature, sometimes listening to music that I like, sometimes just listening to the environment. I also started to do treks in the woods, in the forest with other people. Like, it's a kind of volunteer group. You don't have to pay anything. People just get together and they follow tracks in the nature. And it's really nice because there's a kind of a surprise effect, because I'm not the one who made the track. I just follow the others, and I love nature, and I think it's a very healthy environment to be in. So that definitely helps. And if I don't do those walks, I miss them. So it's like, okay, I have to, even if it's half an hour, I'm going, get out of the door and just walk. Then I started to really take care of myself, even I would say aesthetically, because when we feel good with ourselves, with our body, our mind is also happy. I don't do it regularly. I wish I had the budget to do it, but I started, okay, let's do a face massage, or like a body massage, or go to the spa once in a while. So every time, and I really like those things, so every time I have the money and the time to do it, I do it. And I realized, because with the sciatic crisis that I had for as I told you, rigidity, muscle rigidity, it's my main symptom. What happened during this winter with the humidity in the house where I live and the cold, my muscles started to contract, and I didn't do anything against it. And I was just doing sports like nothing happened, and was just making it worse. There was a point I end up in the emergency room of the hospital because I was in so much pain. And of course they prescribed me medication. So after that episode, but I got better. After that episode, I realized like this will happen more often because this is a problem that I have, and there will be always winter, there'll be always cold. So I have to I have to find a solution that doesn't involve medication, drugs. So I tried acupuncture, I tried osteopathy, and I try steam massage, hot steam massage. And I realize, and that's why it's so important to track what works best for us, because it might not work for others. So in my case, in all these treatments, every time there was a machine, some kind of a machine involved, for instance, acupuncture, some people without Parkinson have muscle contractions. And there's a treatment that it's made with the electrical tension with the needles, and some people find it's the best medicine for them. For me, it was the worst, because everything that it's about not relaxing, not making me feel comfortable, I get the opposite effect. I get even more rigid, even more contracted. So this is something I learned, and at the end of the day, I understood that a simple massage with someone that I trust, with warm hands and hot steam in the area, especially on the lower back, it's the best for me. So I made a kind of a deal with the masseuse that I know. So I was like, I told her, I explained her everything. I said, in case it starts to hurt, my back starts to hurt, can I call you? And they kind of made a deal, because I assumed this was going to happen many times. Can I call you and you give me like a half an hour massage with the steam? And she agreed. And I did this already twice, and I didn't have to take medication because it was right away. This happens normally when I wake up. I wake up and I feel. And if I don't do anything, it gets worse and worse. And at the end, there's no other way than medication. But now I know I have this plan. I wake up, I feel the rigidity, I feel the pain, I call the masseuse, I have the massage. The day after, I feel much better. So it works for me. I think I would say accepting the disease is the most important thing. If you're saying, no, it cannot be, I'm too young, why this happened to me, I don't deserve it, this doesn't lead you to anywhere. That's it. It just brings negativities, even a sense of guilt. What did I do? Did I drink or ate the wrong things? I had a stressful life. It's all my fault. These are thoughts that pass through so many people's heads when they are recently diagnosed. And honestly, these thoughts, they don't lead you to anywhere. And for instance, I have a genetic form of Parkinson's. I did a genetic test. I have the LRRK2 mutation. My mother also has it. It's not her fault. It's not my fault. It's just how things are. And fortunately, I met a wonderful group of people in this Young Parkies, Portugal. And also, since I started my Instagram account, I also met some really wonderful people who also have other Instagram accounts where they share tips and their knowledge and their positive attitude. So we are not alone, and this is a very important message. We are not alone. Okay, it's exceptional to be that young and have Parkinson's, but in fact, when we look around the world, there are thousands of people like us, and there's so many things going on, also in the research field, and supportive groups and associations that are working to help us. We really have to be aware of that. But if you don't accept the disease, you also don't have the will to look for these tools, to even the apps. You have to be comfortable with the disease to be able to help yourself, to find the tools to help yourself. And so that's definitely the number one. Accepting, talking with people, be comfortable with it, finding other people so you don't feel alone, never isolating yourself, talk with your friends, keep up with social life. It's super important. Mental health in with Parkinson's is so important. And let's not forget that the caretakers, the partners, the family around, sometimes they also have to know a little bit about this. For instance, I kind of convinced my husband to come with me to the appointments. He read a book, he's German, he read a book in German about someone who's very famous in Germany and who talk about his experience with Parkinson. And why this is so important to talk with the people who are around you. Because, for instance, depression, it's one of the biggest symptoms of Parkinson's, and people are not very aware of it. And people who suffer depression are not the ones who are going to say, hey, I have depression, I need help. Normally, it's the people who are around this person. So there must be awareness. People should talk with each other. I don't know how many times I talk about this with my husband. So he's very aware because he knows if it hits me, I'm not going to be the one acknowledging it. So it has to be him. He has to know the signs. So I think it's very important to kind of create, kind of talk about it so you can help yourself, and the people around you can also help you in case you need. um and yeah, and for my case, like, I have to say it's life-changing diagnosis, yes, but I have to say, and has more I talk with people who's been living with good life quality and have Parkinson's for many years, they all have something in common. They are very positive. They think outside of the box. They just don't go to the neurology and say yes to everything and get out of there with no questions. No, they are people who inform themselves, who are updated about the newest research results about the diet, about lifestyle. um, they are very active with their jobs. So I've been learning with them, and if you don't accept, if you don't get out of your shell, you would never get to know these amazing people who also have Parkinson's and live a reasonable, normal life, because it's a manageable disease. And yeah, I think the relationship with the neurologist is also very important, not to have this sense that he's the boss and you have to accept everything. I am very lucky with my neurologist. As I mentioned, my neurologist wrote a scientific article because of my reports when it came to the hormonal fluctuations. So she also learns with me, and she wants to hear about me. I also do kind of outside of the box therapy with B1 vitamin, and she cannot recommend it, obviously, as a neurologist, but she's aware, and she likes to hear I feel better, and she wants me to report to her every step of the way of this therapy because she wants to be informed. And who knows, maybe in some years there will be more data about this, and she will know more about it because she has a patient who did it. And so I think this is very important. So I also feel very supported by my neurologist, and yeah, and I think that's very important because she will follow me along the way. Has to deal with me. Be patient.